Hello guys and welcome to the next part of the series of What If Issei also had a persona. If you like the video, please give it a like, share it and subscribe to my channel. Now let's start the video. Chapter 6. I do not own the Persona series or High School DxD. Everything belongs to their respected owners. Futaba Sakura yawned as she found herself bent forward and her face right against a pillow. Pushing herself up, she looked down to see that she was still sitting in the chair that belonged to her private room in the apartment all of the female phantom thieves shared. Her room honestly wasn't any special, just having a few textbooks and gizmos here and there scattered on the floor and shelves. The curtains were open just a touch, sunlight breaking through a crack and shining on the floor. Looking back up, she saw that her screen had several tabs still open. With the recording of the conversation that Son had with Akira, the orange-haired girl was able to listen to the voices over and over again to see if there were any kinds of keywords that could be used to search up on the internet. So far as she could tell, they should just take Sona's word for pretty much everything. It was not that they didn't trust her. The student council president was genuine when she informed them of everything they probably needed to know and could even ask a few questions if needed. But not everything told by Sona could be researched on the internet. Heck, judging by what the girl had said, there was no way that everything they could find be even true as well. If the phantom thieves did need to end up having knowledge of devils, angels, and fallen angels, they would maybe have to ask Sona for that kind of information. But so far as what Futaba could find on the internet, there was the subject about the Lesser Key of Solomon, which must have been the 72 pillars that Sona had been talking about. That was pretty much it, nothing else. At least it was something to build on. Slowly dragging herself out of her room, Futaba opened the door and immediately was hit with several scented smells. Letting her nose soon lead her around the apartment, she ended up in the kitchen where Anne, Makoto, and Haru were all getting some food ready with their clothes on and ready for the day. What's cooking? Futaba asked, yawning while setting herself down on the couch. Well, since the guys are out for their morning exercises again, we decided to make something that will give them more energy to get through the day. Anne stated, already getting the dishes and cutlery ready as she placed all of the out and ready for the food. It's understandable for all of them though, Makoto added as she was stirring a pot while looking over towards the counter to see how she should portion the food. Circling her wrist with an open palm, she smelled the contents of the pot and nodded in satisfaction. Akira recently obtained his persona and is getting back into shape and form. Ryuji had always been a part of the track team, but also joined in the fighting to get his body used to such. Yusuke on the other hand is already a part of the kendo club, so exercise is just all he needs. Although they needed to drag him along for that last part. Do you think we also should be working on our own bodies? Haru questioned, gently taking the pot out of Makoto's grasp and pouring out the oatmeal into the bowls evenly. I mean, we ourselves may get the opportunity to awaken our personas again. Placing the pot down on the stove, Haru walked over to the pitcher that was full of some kind of smoothie as she began to pour a glass for the people currently around her. Oh, that reminds me. She walked over to Futaba and handed her a cup. Did you find anything last night, Futaba-chan? The glasses-wearing girl shook her head, rubbing some sleep out of her eyes. Not really. The best I could do was the 72 pillars. Assuming that all of it is true, then we may get a good idea of what all the clans are like, but there's a good chance that it doesn't include their powers. Thanks anyways though. Makoto nodded her head, also placing the bowl full of Futaba's breakfast in front of the orange-haired girl. You're the only one who actually put any effort into that while we all had to do our own thing. Yeah, Anne had a guilty look on her face as her head was tilted down. Sorry about that. No biggie. Futaba waved her spoon dismissively as she was ready to eat. I already know pretty much a lot of things about the subject we're currently going over at school. So I have a lot of free time. Chuckling to herself in amusement, she took a big bite of the oatmeal as Haru attempted to stop her. Wait, it's still. The heiress was too late though. It's burns. Hot. Haru finished weakly, mentally apologizing to Futaba as the hacker tried to cool the burn by chugging her smoothie. Take a break. Looks like both of your bodies are starting to get used to fighting again already. Morgana gave this comment as he rode on top of a jogging Akira. It was a certainly lovely Sunday morning as their run had started at 6:15, meaning that the boys would have to jog for about 45 minutes in their workout clothing before beginning to have small sparring matches mainly against Yusuke since the blue-haired boy was a bit used to fighting thanks to kendo. The artist kept making small comments how it was odd for boys not being allowed to be in the art club. Akira, Ryuji, and Morgana could already think up of a few reasons why males weren't given permission to join. Poor Yusuke was just part of the indirect causalities, which led him to kendo next mainly because the brush slightly reminded him of the sword, which was why he partially liked using a katana. A great amount of progress has been made for the two of you, or mainly one of you. Yusuke slightly lagged behind the glasses-wearing boy as he was slightly running out of breath already. But such a tired feeling did not stop him from making a small jab. It was barely noticed, but still picked up anyways. "You better not be talking about me," Ryuji replied, being at the front of the group far enough to be considered fast but close enough to hear the words spouted by his companions. "What about Morgana? He's the only one who hasn't even trained with us. All he's been doing is ride Akira and watch us up to this point. I can't just change into my other form just like that here," Morgana said back to the male blonde of the group. His face was partially scrunched up into a frown. "How would you react if you saw a cat suddenly change into something with a big head and a small body?" "You acknowledge that?" Akira asked. Morgana dug his claws into Akira's clothing, partially prickling the boy. "That's not the point I'm trying to make." "Ah, who cares about that? We get it, it'll be awkward," Ryuji concluded on his own, now winded like everyone else as they made it back to the apartment building that they lived in. "Phew, man, it feels so good yet exhausting after a run." The blonde began sweating as everyone else but Morgana were as well. "At least we just need to go up the stair." Going silent, Ryuji slowly realized what he said before cutting himself off. All of them slightly looked up, seeing the flight of stairs that they constantly had to take every day. It used to be so menial all the time. But today, at that moment, they looked extremely intimidating. "You jinxed it, Ryuji." Akira deadpanned as the three of them began to drag themselves up the steps. "How is it my fault?" the blonde questioned as they began to climb. To take their minds off of the exhausting moment, Ryuji suddenly remembered. "Oh right, let's all hang out today. You know, relax and all. Isn't there already the complications of fallen angels and devils around us? We should at least maybe look around town and see if there is anything suspicious at all." Yusuke threw in his own thoughts, already nearly a flight of stairs behind. "Besides, I have my own schedule of making us some money for our daily needs." He soon tripped on a step and fell down. "Finally, made it," Ryuji panted on his knees as Yusuke was flat on the ground. Akira however was on his feet but had his legs bent. All of them breathed in large amounts of oxygen as they desperately needed it. Reaching over to the doorknob, Ryuji jiggled it around a bit but he couldn't get it open. Remembering, he reached into his pocket for his key but then froze. "Is there any chance that one of us at least has a lockpick on their person?" "Take a break. Thank you. Come again." The store clerk bowed with polite intentions as Futaba and Kaneko both gathered bagged goods at the end of the counterware that the register rested on. Departing from the line of customers, Kenko at least nodded her head and proceeded to leave the supermarket area right behind Futaba while carrying everything. "Are you sure you can carry all those snacks, Kaneko-chan? You at least let me hold onto a bag," Futaba offered, slowing her steps down so that she could go at the steady pace that the white-haired girl was going. "I mean, we are sharing them while studying after all overnight." The smaller girl nearly had her view covered as there was a plastic bag for each of her arms while a large paper bag nearly grew over her eyes. The two hanging off of her held all of the chips. The next was filled with candy. There was then the paper bag, packed with several soda brands the both of them liked. "I'm fine." Kaneko nodded as she continued to talk without any difficulty. "Okay, if you say so." The glasses-wearing girl shrugged her shoulders while walking backwards to watch Kaneko carry the amount despite her short size. The both of them were silent for a small while, letting their footsteps fill the space between them. It then began to remind Futaba of something. "Doesn't this seem familiar?" she asked, getting a small look from Kaneko. Or at least it seemed like the white-haired girl was trying to make a face. It was hard to tell since most of it was covered by the bag. I was just walking down the street on my own when I first saw you carrying so many bags. Right, Kaneko slowly said. The two of them suddenly yet sluggishly began to remember what had happened then. Futaba had stared at the girl as Kaneko made her way along the sidewalk. But then the smaller girl ended up tripping on a small pebble and fell forward right on top of Futaba. Seeing all of the snacks scattered everywhere, the two of them quickly cleaned up and the orange-haired girl at least offered to carry the bag that covered the white-haired girl's vision until they got to Kaneko's house. Soon enough, in a sudden surprising twist, Futaba managed to get one friend within the span of a walk. Still walking backwards, Futaba was unable to see what was behind her. Kaneko couldn't really see either, so it was a bit of a surprise as the phantom thief accidentally bumped into a man wearing a light purple trench coat and a similarly colored fedora. Oh, oops, sorry. Futaba quickly apologized as she stepped out of the way for the man to pass her. The adult didn't respond, instead fully turning his body to stare at the young woman who had bumped into him. He then looked over to Kenko next. Futaba didn't notice Kaneko's sudden wary look at the orange-haired girl cocked an eyebrow after a few seconds of silence. Hello. Futaba drawled out. Anyone in there? She raised her hand to wave it in front of the man's eyes. It was at that moment Kaneko dropped all of her things as she suddenly tackled Futaba out of the way as a spear was suddenly in the air. If the white-haired girl didn't move, the man would have succeeded in stabbing Futaba through the stomach. So, it seems that you are a devil. The man muttered loud enough for the two females to hear. He watched in slight interest at Kaneko and Futaba slowly began getting back up to their feet. Or at least you with the white hair. Your companion is a human though, if I believe correctly. Kaneko-chan. Why is a fallen angel attacking us? Kaneko narrowed her eyes as she slowly began taking a stance to prepare for conflict. Her hands were also raised while seeming to prepare something. I believe the answer should be obvious. The man stated, already forming a spear out of light and presenting a small flourish before taking a stance of his own. You are a devil while you already know what I am. You are also without a peerage nearby. I have yet to also see you ready a summoning circle. Which makes me wonder if you are astray or not. He then looked over towards Futaba. Though I'm not sure if you want to use it with that human around if you could. Kaneko slightly froze as she tilted her over to eye the human that was watching them with a bit of a surprised look on her face. To be honest, Futaba was a bit surprised that Kaneko was a devil. When it became obvious that the Occult Research Club was entirely compiled of devils, Akira let all the phantom thieves know. But so far as the all could tell, including Futaba, Kaneko was hardly seen hanging around the club. The only moment that the white-haired girl was seen with Rias and the others just that one time in the cafe Akira worked at. It was so obvious but only for a moment they all didn't take notice of. Futaba, run, Kaneko said quietly at first, tensing her muscles to get a fight ready. Her plan was to get the phantom thief to get away before creating a summoning circle to have Rias come through and put the situation to a stop as quickly as possible. As if I'd let her. You seem to be very close to the human. Close enough that you don't want her to get hurt. I may have standards, but they don't apply to the current situation at the moment. The stranger said as black wings suddenly sprouted from his back. Perhaps I should also introduce myself. My name is Danesik, and it was fate that led us to this moment. Run. Ignoring the snacks, Kaneko grabbed Futaba's hand and began to drag the girl along. Futaba could keep up with the small girl as the two of them soon began dashing around the area hoping to lose Danesik. But the partially proved easier said than done. Due to her rank as a rook, Kaneko was not the fastest person. Especially against someone who could follow them easily due to their ability of flying. Miraculously, there weren't any spectators or witnesses that saw what was happening as the two females eventually made it near the edge of two they lived in where no one really lived. Kaneko then had to push Futaba out of the way as the white-haired girl took a spear to the leg. Kaneko-chan. Futaba cried out as the smaller girl fell over and gritted her teeth to prevent a cry from coming out. Kaneko didn't want to have Futaba worry over her and put the girl into more danger. Just go. She grinded out, slowly getting back up despite the object on light in her leg. Get out of here. I'll be fine. But you're bleeding and you have a hole in your leg. Futaba exclaimed, her mind in enough panic to not think about calling the others. Even if she did, only Akira and Morgana could help. They would also have to quickly get across the two, and she was in doubt they would arrive fast enough. "It'll be fine," Kaneko said quietly, really not wanting to put the girl in any more danger. Still standing, there was strength that kept her going and ready for a proper fight. She was a rook, and her still standing strong proved it. Danesik chuckled at how Futaba was so concerned over the white-haired devil. "I somehow doubt that," he commented as he created another spear and leveled it at Futaba. Throwing it, he was satisfied when Kaneko grabbed it but then hissed in extreme agony before dropping it. "You know, human, it's your fault if you think about it." Throwing a couple of weapons made of light at the same time, one struck Kaneko's other leg while the other was caught and dropped by the girl again. "If only you would stop staying around and began running. That way this devil here wouldn't have to suffer." Futaba's eyes narrowed though, running forward past Kaneko who almost stopped her. But with the speed that the phantom thief was going, the white-haired devil couldn't catch her in time. Futaba threw a punch to Danesik's stomach, but the fallen angle hardly reacted. Was that supposed to hurt? He didn't finish as Futaba kicked him right where the sun doesn't shine. "Yes, it probably is my fault that Kaneko-chan is hurt." Futaba nodded her head, saying the words slowly. "But I want to hear it directly from her mouth to be sure." Turning her head over, she stared. As Danesik growled while clutching his jewels in pain, Kaneko kept her gaze staring at the other girl. Slowly realizing that she needed to answer, she opened her mouth to speak. "It's not your fault." Futaba nodded, a small glare forming on her features as she stood strongly in front of Kaneko. "For almost my entire life I've been misled by other people. But not anymore. I already knew that those words of yours were lies already. But hearing the truth from Kaneko-chan was what I truly needed." She then pointed towards Danesik. "It's really your fault, you bastard. You're really the one she's suffering so much. I know there isn't much I can do right now, but I can promise this. I'll make you pay for what you've done to her." Suddenly, small particles followed by a shining light began to form around Futaba's body. As her look was filled with determination, only Kaneko and Danesik stared at what was happening. Some kind of ghost began to grow and form from Futaba's body. Soon enough, within seconds, it took a full form. It was another Futaba, but different. This new Futaba had yellow eyes and an almost tranquil look. Her clothing was different as well, dressed up like an Egyptian princess. Bandages were wrapped around her chest as so much skin was showing, with only white silk covering half of her leg. Slowly ascending, the other Futaba only floated a few meters above the real girl before the Egyptian figure began to burst into more light. Still watching, Danesik was the first to snap out of his stupor. He didn't know what was happening, but he had a gut feeling that it was going to be dangerous to him. Forming a new spear of light, he threw it as hard as he could so that it would be fast enough to hit Futaba. It was unsuccessful as a metal tentacle slapped the weapon off to the side. Everyone immediately looked up to see where the part had come from. Apparently, it had sprouted from what looked like a UFO. It baffled Kaneko and Danesik as Futaba's jaw partially dropped at seeing her persona, Necronomicon, again. The flying saucer had 5 domes on its bottom, a line pattern connecting them so it looked like it was shaping a pentagram. Circuit designs were scattered all over the strange object, blue being on the bottom half while green took over the upper portion. On top, there was, in some opinions, an out-of-place metallic gargoyle statue. Crouching down, as everyone was still stunned, more metal tentacles began to creep out. Slithering around Futaba, the girl watched as such limbs wrapped around her wrists, legs, and stomach as it slowly and gently pulled her into the UFO. As her face entered the mysterious flying saucer, her world went black. Reminder: I am thou, thou art I. Opening access channels to forbidden knowledge. Slowly opening her eyes, Futaba wondered when she actually closed them. But that thought was thrown out the proverbial window. Looking around her, she let out several gasps of excitement. She saw everything. All of the text that she would see on a computer. Her own private world from the outside. She remembered what it was like with Persona, what she could do with Necronomicon. Reality and fantasy. No longer shall such mysteries and illusions deceive you any longer. Futaba looked down at herself, to see that she was floating inside the darkness like she usually would. She was also in her attire whenever she and the others would enter the metaverse. A skin-tight black bodysuit with fluorescent neon green glowing strips and matching black boots with neon green soles. Grinning to herself, she began swiping and tapping on a multitude of icons as she continued to comfortably float in the green-lit darkness. Outside, Kaneko was in shock but also in a bit of awe. But her reaction was to just render herself speechless for a few seconds. "Futaba?" she asked, wondering if she should have spoken louder due to her friend being dragged into the flying saucer. "I'm okay." Futaba's voice could suddenly be heard inside of Kaneko's head as the girl quickly darted her eyes back and forth, unsure of where it came from. "Would you look at that?" Danesik said slowly in fascination, taking a step back to get a better look at the persona. He may have not been the first fallen angel, but he was perhaps the first of his kind. The first of his kind too, if this were not a fake, see a real UFO. "Hold on a second and let me fix you up." Feeling a warm sensation, Kaneko looked down to her body. Her frame was embraced by a white light, but it was nothing holy. She felt a little tickled as the brightness soon began to dim a bit. Soon though, there was not even a scratch on her body. Burns were no longer scorched and charred her hands. "What is?" "Sorry, Kaneko-chan, no time to explain," Futaba stated, cutting off Kaneko mid-sentence. Still floating in mid-air, the phantom thief gestured towards Danesik with her head. "Let's first kick this guy's ass." The small devil's mouth was left hanging open for a second. Indeed, a few questions were running through her mind. But she supposed she could wait a bit longer. Futaba didn't really question what was going on at the moment, why should she? With a nod of her head, Kaneko rushed forward towards Danesik. Danesik quickly stepped to the side, just managing to dodge Kaneko's charging punch. "So you still wish to fight?" Despite having to create spears of light over and over again, it was admittingly perhaps the most effective way of dealing with the devil. Making his weapon, he swung his arm. "Oh no you don't," Futaba exclaimed as she watched everything happening in Necronomicon. "Here comes a buff, Kaneko-chan." Quickly with her fingers, she began tapping several symbols as if she were on a keyboard. A cat icon soon formed right in front of her face as she grinned at the sight while slamming a fist onto it. "Speed up." Kaneko's body suddenly felt lighter as a green light started at her feet but quickly spread up to the top of her head. It was as if several weights had been lifted from her being. With her foot stomping on the ground when her fist missed, Kaneko pivoted on the concrete and managed to strike Danesik's stomach before he could scratch her. Knocked away, the fallen angel was quick to regain his footing but then had to clutch his stomach. "You're fast. Have you been holding back your speed this entire time?" Danesik asked, standing up straight. "No, otherwise you would have already run." Could it be? His eyes darted slightly over to Necronomicon that was hovering closely to and above Kaneko. But due to that moment of distraction, the lightness of Kaneko's body was still in effect and provided her with the perfect opportunity to grab Danesik by the head and slam his face to the ground. But she didn't end there. Running forward along the street and the curb, the girl kept grinding the man along the pavement before tossing him against a lamp post. "Goo," Danesik grunted, already felt like he was in for a losing battle. But he still held his ground when he saw the devil running towards him. Clenching a fist while popping a couple of bones in his fingers, he made a stabbing motion and had a spear of light pierce Kaneko right in her stomach. With a large swipe, the fallen angle sent the devil soaring across the air and rolling against the stone area they were in. Eventually, after several bumps to the head, Kaneko regained her footing. With finger digging into the pavement to put her to a stop, she could feel the tingling sensation from before when Futaba said she would fix her up. Saying this late, "But don't run in so recklessly," Futaba stated in a slightly worrying tone. With several tapping motions, she brought up a screen that showed Danesik's body along with several boxes of texts and colors. "He's hurt, but don't let that get to you." "Thanks." Kaneko nodded, too into the moment and forgetting about Futaba's persona. Running forward once again, her body suddenly began to gain weight. As this happened, Danesik began throwing a blizzard of light spears towards the devil. "Shoot, your speed went down, Kaneko-chan. Hold on, get ready to take a few hits." Still running through, her arms, body, and legs all felt like a boost of strength had been placed into her when a purple light washed all over her. Watching the spears continuing to soar towards her, Kaneko proceeded to make her way to Daneseek while covering her face with her arms. To her and Daneseek's surprise, the light spears didn't pierce any flesh at all. The worst that the weapons of light did were burn the devil. But even so, the spears just bounced off Kaneko's skin. Leaping through the bombardment, Kaneko was right in front of the fallen angel's face before landing a fist against his cheek. Despite the hit, Daneseek stood his ground and tired to stab Kaneko with a new spear of light. But the small girl grabbed the light, hissing as it burned her skin. But she could still keep a hold of it. With the strength of her rook piece, she managed to beat Daneseek in the test of strength as she threw him a fair distance away but still stood on the spot as she felt herself get healed by Futaba again. Panting, Daneseek stared at the small devil who he could hurt over and over again but never progress in any way to defeat her. He had taken in way too much pain during the combat. Perhaps the fight would have been a bit more fair if it was just the white-haired girl alone. But with that human inside the UFO providing support, he should have known that it would have ended up as his loss from the beginning. But he was stubborn since he loved to fight. Not bothering to fully get up, he chose to sit on his bottom and watch as the devil approached him. "Are you going to kill me now?" "It would be the wisest and perhaps most sane decision," Daneseek said, looking straight at Kaneko's eyes. "I am a fallen after all, and you are a devil. It's only natural." Staring, Kaneko raised her fist. "Kaneko-chan, wait." Futaba suddenly appeared right behind the white-haired girl as Necronomicon disappeared while grabbing the girl's fist. A pair of big black goggles with orange lenses was right on her face, covering her eyes. "You don't have to kill him." The white-haired devil slowly turned over towards Futaba and stared for several seconds. It was unknown what was going through Kaneko's mind, but she kept on staring at Futaba. Her head then craned over to Daneseek, who still sat without an attempt to attack or even move. She then turned back to Futaba. "He tried to kill you, and you beat him into a pulp. Don't you think that's enough?" Futaba asked, clenching onto Kaneko's fist even tighter. There was a silence between the three of them. Eventually though, the strength in the fist began to loosen. Soon enough, Futaba slipped her fingers into Kaneko's hand due to how loose the fist had become. "Thank you, Kaneko-chan," Futaba whispered before looking to Daneseek. "And you, why did you suddenly try to attack me and Kaneko-chan out of the blue?" "That should be a question for your friend and not me, among many other things." Daneseek grunted, slowly getting back up to his feet but didn't bother retreating. Instead, he settled for staring at Futaba once more, but this time with curiosity. "But I wonder, why do you choose to spare me?" Because I felt like it," Futaba questioned, making it sound more like a statement. "I mean, I think I've already proved that I'm better, so if we cross again we won't have to have such a dispute. Plus, this just means you owe me big time." Futaba made sure that she was between Kaneko and the fallen angel. Daneseek blinked at the human's reasoning. He then soon began to burst out laughing. "You are perhaps one of the strangest people I have ever met." His chortling was a fast phase though as he regained control. "Either way, I thank you for sparing my life, much to my humiliation to have to say that to a human." Futaba stuck her tongue out at him. "But, if I may ask, what was that UFO? You seemed to be familiar with it." Futaba blinked and soon immediately remembered that she was supposed to try and play it safe. Slightly panicking, she thought up of an answer. It was as if it were a part of me, that I already knew how to use Necronomicon." Luckily, she managed to fix her tone so that it sounded more like a statement rather than a question. Daneseek sighed. "I see, I seem to be getting unluckier by the minute ever since I've run into you two." He turned around, spreading his black fallen wings as he prepared to take off into the night. But before he did, he turned around. "Wait a second, did you say Necronomicon? As in that flying saucer's name is Necronomicon?" Futaba kept her mouth shut, realizing that she had made a mistake and refused to say a word. Turning back to face Futaba, Daneseek took a step forward. Kaneko responded by standing in front of Futaba, but the fallen angel didn't move any closer. "No, the Necronomicon is supposed to be a grimoire, but it's also supposed to be a complete work of fiction. Yet there are many fallen angels, and even devils that believe that it truly exists and is no fantasy. You okay? Futaba asked slowly. Kaneko-chan didn't hit you too hard on the head, right? The fallen angel continued to stare at Futaba in response, something that really began to unsettle the girl. Girl, what is your name? The orange-haired girl gave the man a weird look. Futaba Sakura, she said awkwardly. Taking the fedora off of his head, Danesik bowed. My deepest apologies for attacking you. I shall take my leave now thanks to your generosity. But I pray that we shall meet again, as you are the great owner of the Necronomicon, the holder of forbidden knowledge of the Ancient Ones. As Danesik flew away, Futaba slowly turned over towards Kaneko as the white-haired devil stared back at her. Suddenly having her phantom thief costume change back into her original clothing, Futaba soon realized that she had just used her persona with ease right in front of Kaneko. She may have ended up ruining the large plan to lay low until they were comfortable enough to reveal their true identities. I can explain, Kaneko said curtly, or maybe Futaba had lucked out and got Kaneko to break first. Take a break. So, you're a devil. Futaba tired to act surprised, but she already knew pretty much everything that Kaneko had explained to her. Sitting inside the Neko no Mi's, they both loved the cafe. The two of them had grabbed a booth and the white-haired devil spilled the beans that Futaba already knew. But the orange-haired girl at least had to act a bit when such big reveals came her way. After revealing her identity, Kaneko went silent. She was either waiting for Futaba to react or thinking of what to say next. You know, I've always pictured devils with horns and those pointy tails, Futaba commented. That's a common misunderstanding, Kaneko answered before going silent once more. Futaba, are you okay with this? Knowing that I'm a devil? Futaba blinked. What, me? PFF'd. She blew air from her teeth and made her lips flap back and forth. Come on, Kaneko-chan. Do you really think that devil stuff is supposed to be scary? You guys sound pretty normal compared to that fire and brimstone kind of stuff. Besides, you're pretty cool to be with. Why would I not be okay with this? Although I do have to ask, what's with that thing I summoned? I know its name was Necronomicon and how to use it, but how and why? Asked Kurusu-senpai. Kaneko answered, feeling extremely happy that her friend just accepted her for who she was. Although, there was still one secret that Kaneko was keeping. But, she promised to herself later. Later she would tell Futaba who she really was. The orange-haired girl deserved to at least know her true name and heritage. Thank you for waiting. The two girls turned their heads and saw that a waiter was balancing 4 plates of curry rice on his arm as he gently placed them onto the table on Futaba's side. Here's your order, miss. The server then turned over towards Kaneko. And for the young lady, we have prepared the catastrophic curry challenge for you. Since this is your first time, you will be facing the volcanic curry, a curry so that practically erupts with flavor and spice. Futaba just stared at the massive pot that was being carried over towards Kaneko while the other girl drooled. Why did this cafe have such a thing going on again? Oh, right, Akira was the one to suggest it thanks to the Big Bang Burger challenge. With a heavy thud, the pot was set right in front of Kaneko. Well then, it's time to get the 30-minute catastrophic curry challenge started. The waiter stated loudly, getting attention from several customers. Are you prepared, Kaneko-chan? Futaba asked. Kaneko's reaction was to hold a spoon up as there was a gleam on the silverware and in her eyes. My body is ready. Take a break. 29 minutes and 30 seconds have passed. Better hurry. Futaba was in a slight panic as she watched Kaneko slowly place her spoon down as there was literally 1 scoop of curry left inside the pot. Acting quickly, the orange-haired girl grabbed the final spoonful and set herself right beside Kaneko. Miss, you're not allowed to do that. That's against the rules. But Futaba ignored the words of the waiter watching them. One more bite, Kaneko-chan. One more bite. She constantly poked her friend's cheek. But Kaneko refused to open up, choosing to keep her lips tight. Stop it, she mumbled. 6,000 words later, I got a chapter out. Not really that good, but there was Futaba getting her persona into reality. Makes you wonder who is going to be next. No flames please. Chapter 7. I do not own the Persona series or High School DxD. Everything belongs to their respected owners. I'm sorry, guys. Futaba apologized loudly as she shut her eyes. Surrounding her were all of her Phantom Thief comrades and friends over breakfast time in the girl's apartment. A few hours had passed since the incident of Futaba, Kaneko, and the fallen angel known as Danesik. Since it was a bit of an issue that she awakened her persona, Futaba let everyone know of the incident that had occurred. Makoto closed her own eyes but was not angry at all. It's all right, Futaba-chan, she gently said to the hacker of the group. She could understand why the girl was so apologetic. Everyone could understand. I'm just happy that you weren't really hurt during that fight with the fallen angel. Really? The orange-haired girl looked up and saw everyone having a small smile on their faces. The shortest of them all read it as a good thing and smiled as well. Thanks for not getting mad at me. I thought I might have risked the reveal of our identities. Although, this does make it a small issue. Yusuke commented, grabbing everyone's attention. Looking down in thought, he was silent for a few seconds and looked back up. This certainly means that there is more than one fallen angel here. Although we could have easily drawn that conclusion from this Rainier character, Danesik confirms it. Ah, crap, Ryuji commented, leaning back on the couch he was sitting on, taking a swing from his cup of orange juice. What if there's a freaking army of those black-winged guys? Shouldn't we at least be prepared or something? I know that there's Morgana, Akira, and now even Futaba who has their personas. But just thinking about what could happen is getting ridiculous. Being prepared though, Anne said slowly, thinking about what the male blonde had said. She then turned her head over towards Futaba who was nibbling on a slice of toast. Hey, Futaba-chan, can you tell us how you got your persona back? Dunno, Futaba said in a muffled volume with a mouthful of bread before swallowing. I just felt like, you know how when everyone but Haru was in my palace. Remember when I gave my little speech? It was kind of like that. It's like I had to be reminded what I had gone through or even had to live through a huge moment of stress before Necronomicon awakened again. Ryuji put his lack of knowledge into a blunt word. I think I understand what Futaba-chan is trying to say. Makoto voiced her own words while cutting up an egg with her fork. Remember that last sentence she said, Ryuji? From what I can tell, it may be in a way similar to our very first awakenings or from a sudden burst of emotion. I can't be certain if this is true or not, but it could be a place to start. Perhaps it could be, Haru said slowly, putting her dishes in the sink of the place. Still, this is very complicated. Does that mean that we all are going to have to go through something similar like before? I'm not sure if there are likely chances. Either way, this is an issue we all cannot ignore. Morgana stated, pacing around the table while trying to avoid getting his feet caught in anybody's food. We also know that the fallen angels are occupying the area. But we have no idea where their headquarters are or if they even have any. It would be good to know where they live so that we could attack when things turn bad. Should we hold our own investigations? Akira voiced out, listening to the conversation but also trying to come up with a plan. He was the leader after all. He at least had to be organized when it came down to these kinds of things. Maybe, but we can't have you, me, or Futaba do it then since it could raise some more suspicion. Morgana answered, stuffing his face for a couple of seconds before swallowing. Kaneko probably would have told Romori-san what had happened last night. Which will mean that we'll be watched for certain. We'll have to be on our guards even more than usual. So not much then, Ryuji commented. Blinking, he watched as everyone slowly craned their heads towards him. Oh, come on, don't look at me like that, he exclaimed. Most of yous have yet to do anything that warrants anyone to follow to be suspicious of us. The only people who should be watching their backs are Akira, Morgana, and Futaba. But we are in the same group, Ryu-chan. Haru reminded, the blonde. Seeing him give off a curious look, Haru decided to elaborate. We all have been together since we first arrived here. Don't you think they would find it weird that we are slowly regaining our personas and those factors as put in? The male stared at the heiress before sighing. All right, yeah, I guess you're right. He stuffed a piece of bacon into his mouth. Seriously though, he chewed. Where do you think we should start looking at this rate if we want to know where the fallen angels are? Let's think about that after school. Akira got up to his feet, cleaning his plate quickly before putting it into the sink. As everyone else began to clean up after themselves, he looked over towards Futaba. "Oh right, I should probably warn you, Futaba. You're probably going to be in for a very long day." Confusion took over the hacker's face at her leader's words. "What do you mean by that?" she asked curiously. "Take a break." So, this was what Akira meant. Sitting in the middle of the Occult Research Club's room after school, Futaba was awkwardly sitting on a couch next to Kaneko as the rest of the members were standing up and around her. Such an act reminded her of an interrogation. "How many times do I have to say it?" Futaba said in a slightly whiny voice, already getting tired from having to repeat herself. "I don't want to join your peerage thing." Rias let out a loud groan as she dramatically slumped down in her seat at the chair to her offer. Standing next to her with an amused look was Akino, while Kiba couldn't help me smile at the interaction between Futaba and his king. Issei meanwhile had a confused expression on his face. Bucho, why are you constantly pressing Futaba-san about this issue?" the brunette of the group asked curiously. "She says that she doesn't want to join. Can't you just stop it at that? I mean, it doesn't look like she's going to change her answer." Rias was unable to reply to Issei as she sprung back up as if she were pulled by a set of strings and pointed. "Come on, you'll get awesome devil powers. You'll be able to use you summon much more effective. Are you going to teach me how?" Futaba asked. That managed to shut Rias up. Boo, the orange-haired girl said in a disapproving tone, pointing a thumb down to add to the effect. -50 convincing points. You're already in the negatives by a large margin. I have no idea how you're going to win me back. Considering that Kaneko had asked her to come here, Futaba stayed glued in her spot rather than just bolting out of the door due to not wanting to be in the room at all. Considering how she already knew everything Akira knew with everyone else, Rias thankfully skipped to the point the redhead wanted to make. But it was just so annoying to try and get that woman to leave her alone. "Kaneko-chan, Grimori-san keeps bullying me," Futaba tattled, much to Rias' shock, to Kaneko. "Tell her to stop," she continued to drawl out. "I'm not bullying you," Rias answered. "Yes, you are," Futaba exclaimed back. "No, I'm not," the redhead replied. "Yaha, nah, yaha, nah, yaha, nah." A single finger was eventually raised and made the room fall silent. It was by a small hand, judging by the size of the thin arm. Slowly looking over towards the source of the arm, Futaba had to move her head to the side while everyone else just moved their heads a little bit. In their eyes, Kaneko had a flat look as she was staring and pointing at Rias. "Number," she stated before looking back down to some cookies that were on a plate and began munching on them again. Futaba grinned while sticking her tongue out to Rias. "See?" she asked smugly while hugging Kaneko. "She told you to stop." "No, she didn't," Rias exclaimed. "Yeah, she did," Futaba countered. "Did not, did to, did not, did to, did to, did not, ha," Rias said triumphantly, folding her arms in superiority. "You just agreed that Kaneko told me to not stop. But you agreed that Kaneko-chan told you to stop before that." Futaba bickered back. "Did not, did to." Kaneko continued to nibble on her snacks, undisturbed and undistracted. Everyone else in the room meanwhile just stared at the bickering of Rias and Futaba while Kaneko sat silently in the middle of it all. "Are we even a part of this conversation anymore?" Issei asked, pointing at the three sitting down. "Take a break." The sound of a wooden dummy being beaten echoed through the surprisingly empty school gym. Echoes of impact bounced around the walls. Each strike was crisp and perfect. The speed in which each sound came was fast, but also took its time at the same time. Every couple of seconds, one would be louder than the previous ones. Hit by hit, they grew louder. Pausing, there was only a second of silence before the banging of wood resumed once more. Akira focused a bit as he began to slowly have his body remember of the Wing Chun cat as he was taught back in the sport gym in Shibuya. Staring at the three upper, wooden points of the dummy, he struck the neck of his target while having his arm stiff against two of the wooden limbs. Lifting his foot to hit one of the lower wooden part, his left arm hit a higher limb as his right struck the face. With a couple movements of the arm, Akira slightly lowered his body as both hands now struck the dummy's chest. Each strike was precise and tense yet flowed easily. Sweating, Akira felt the drops of water run down his uncovered chest since he knew that the workout was going to be a bit intense by his own standards. Wow, Akira, your body is really starting to remember those katas. Morgana commented, sitting on top of the head of the wooden dummy. Guess it's all coming down to muscle memory, huh? Akira nodded, grabbing a towel and wiping himself off while taking a few sips from his water bottle. He was fast when learning these kinds of things or even getting used to them. It only took about 4 days to get used to the dummy and another couple after to master the katas back in Tokyo. He could assume he was just that kind of guy that could adapt. Citri-san coming in from behind. Hearing Morgana, Akira turned his body around and indeed saw the student council president walking towards him. At the same time, the two phantom thieves noticed that there was no company with her. It was either that she actually came alone, or they were in hiding just in case they needed to ambush him. If Akira had to say, he did not expect seeing Sona. Hello, Citri-san. The persona user nodded his head nonchalantly in the student council president's direction before taking another swing of his water bottle. Never thought I'd see you here. I see that you are busy improving your body, Akira-san. Sona stated, eyes slowly trailing up and down his body. From what she could observe, Akira had well built despite him looking pretty skinny. Maybe it was because of the clothing he wore it made him look thin. So far as she could tell from the exposed skin, he was well-toned as well with a fair amount of muscle that would be appealing to most girls. Keyword being most. You also seem to handle your katas against the dummy fairly well. She commented, having a bag slung over her shoulder as she adjusted the strap. Akira looked over towards the wood that he was beating. But his eyes were staring at Morgana. Since the cat was watching what was behind the boy the entire time but also observing his fighting, the cat should have been able to see Sona watching them. Yeah, he's pretty good with it, Morgana answered. Sona simply nodded as Akira turned back to her. Right, but I think you prefer to skip the small talk and move on to the reason why I am here. She stated. Not really. Akira shrugged his shoulders. Small talk is usually a good way to understand someone at first or get closer with them. That way if you accidentally say something they do not like, they won't be as angry as they would be towards you as before. Debatable, but thank you for the advice. Sona felt her glasses slipping down a bit so she had to readjust them. She reached over towards her bag and pulled out a laptop that she had stored inside. Opening it, she began to type in the password. What I wanted to talk to you about was this. Turning the laptop screen over towards Akira and Morgana, the two of them saw the home page to fan site. Things just got a bit more complicated now. What is it? Akira asked, attempting to play dumb. Hopefully, he could get away with it and throw Sona into a loop. He didn't want to reveal his or anyone else's identity yet, but it seemed that Sona was not as dumb as he hoped she would be. Then again, maybe it would be better that way. From what I can tell, it is called the fan site. An online webpage with several conversation threads and also talking about what sort of achievements they have done. She stated, causing Akira to continue to stare onwards. Not only did this website appear just last year, but also in Tokyo, where I remember that is the city where you and your companions all came from. Oh yeah, Akira trailed off, as if remembering. The reason it's called fan site is because it's inspired by the name. Phantom Thieves of Hearts. Sona finished for Akira, still holding a straight face but an unreadable glint was in her eyes. I know. They're fairly known around the world if I am correct. Due to that group, there had been several incidents where people acted extremely foul but suddenly began to confess what they have done, apologize, and even seem to compensate for what they have done. There are a few actual significant events though. Gesturing towards a nearby bench, she walked over towards the wooden seating as Akira and Morgana followed her. As the two phantom thieves looked at one another while taking their own seats, Sona had already grabbed a second chair that was nearby and set up her laptop on top of it. Suguru Kamoshida, a former professional athlete and Olympic volleyball champion, former volleyball coach of Shujin Academy, he admits that he sexually harassed and abused his own students. She pulled out a photo of the teacher and placed it down. Ikuryusai Madarame, an artist who was really plagiarized his own pupils' work while abusing them. She pulled out a picture of the former con artist next. Junya Kaneshiro, a crime lord who even the police had trouble managing to arrest the man due to lacking evidence, until he confessed his acts of blackmail and turned himself into the police. She put the photo down. Kunakazu Okumura, father of Haru Okumura, the former president of Okumura Foods. He confessed at a press conference of his maltreatment of his employees, but then soon dies in a very disturbing fashion. With a frown now, she slightly narrowed her eyes towards Akira while putting the picture down. Then there is Masayoshi Shido, former politician who had been attempting to run as the next Prime Minister of Japan. He, however, confesses many crimes that he has committed before the broadcast had to be shut off. Seeing the final photo being placed down, Akira noticed that Sona's narrowed eyes with a frown accompanying it was still on her face. There was one thing in common when it came down to these 6 incidents, a calling card which the phantom thieves used to warn their victims that they were going to steal their hearts, and they were successful it seems by having them all confess what they had done. Akira slowly waited for the reason to why Sona was not looking at him nicely. However, there is the issue of Kunakazu Okumura, she said. Akira immediately knew what the issue was, but if she suspected him being a phantom thief however was a different issue. His death, she looked up to Akira. What did you do to him? Akira Kurusu, a member of the Phantom Thieves of Hearts. There it was. The words he was looking for came straight from her mouth. It still surprised him though. A slightly alarmed look was worn on his face. He thought about trying to deny her accusations. His mouth slightly opened, but then it fell silent. Should he really lie to her? While I am lacking the proper amount of evidence and proof, it is simply a conclusion that makes a bit more sense to me rather than anything else I could come up with. Her look lost a small amount of anger and slightly became a bit pleading. I ask that you do not lie to me. This is an issue that is extremely important to me and the safety of the students of Kuo Academy. Looking down towards Morgana, it seemed the feline also had the same reaction. But he too was silent. Sighing, he looked at Sona before answering. How did you find out? Akira asked her, deciding not to lie. Sona had trusted him, giving him the information that he needed so far related to the devils, angels, and fallen angels. It was about time he had shown the same amount of trust to her. With all of the research I've done, Sona commented, her face giving off suspicion once again as she folded her arms. You transferred over to Tokyo due to unknown reasons. Due to this sudden change in education places, you attended Shujin Academy last year. But that year was when the Phantom Thieves appeared. Not only that, but I believe that it also involves the power of your persona. Since Morgana said that they are not sacred gears, it made me then think about what they were. But then it made me think while searching, how were the Phantom Thieves able to change the hearts? That question led me to the hypothesis of a persona being related to such cases. She closed her eyes for a small moment before opening them into a glare. But I digress. What did you do to Kunakazu Okumura to have him die like that? Why did you need to kill him at all? We didn't, Akira answered. You're lying, Sona replied. I am not, Akira countered, narrowing his own eyes back in defiance. Watching Sona open her mouth, he waited for her voice to deny him again. But she didn't. She instead chose to close her lips, taking the silence as a means to continue. That's exactly what he did. We managed to steal his heart. But while he escaped, something had happened. Someone else had killed him. Are you trying to shift the blame? Sona questioned. Akira sighed, almost feeling like he was back in the interrogation room with Sei Nijima when he was captured. I'm telling the truth, he stated, looking directly at Sona's eyes. You can think I am lying, but I am not. He didn't let her reply. The persona who killed Okumura was Guro Akechi. Sona blinked. Guro Akechi, the detective prince. He nodded. He was a persona user as well. With his power, he murdered many other people before, being the cause of many metal shutdowns and people suddenly going insane. All of it because of Shido. Shido used Akechi as a hitman to cause incidents that would eliminate the competition to be able to take over as the Prime Minister of Japan. Sona listened with patience. Yes, she could choose to doubt Akira's words and immediately have him and his friends taken into the underworld or even the police to have them charged by the law. Although there was the issue about evidence once again. But she felt like she should give the boy a chance to explain. Then, if I may ask, how did the Phantom Thieves steal hearts and Guro Akechi kill Okumura-san? Akira thought about it for a moment. He could easily explain how he had done it. But then that led to a problem. He had no evidence. The Metaverse Navigator app had disappeared when Yaldabaoth died in turn. I have nothing to prove that I am telling the truth though, Akira warned. To his surprise, Sona nodded her head slowly. I at least expect you not to lie, she stated. I will be the judge of your words however. Akira nodded in thanks. There is something called the metaverse, which involves individual cognitions. He really wished Futaba was around so that it would be easier to explain it all. Using something called the metaverse app, we could enter a person's cognitive world depending on who they were. When entering, we could see the world as the person would see it from their own eyes. Sona raised an eyebrow. See the world as the person would see it. He nodded his head. Right. For example, Kamoshida viewed Shujin Academy like his own castle. Inside all girls were obedient sex slaves while all students of the volleyball club were jailed and painfully trained. He paused to let it sink in. What does that have to do with stealing hearts and the death of Okumura-san? For the cognitive worlds we enter, those people have what we call treasures. Akira explained. Such treasure is basically the corruption or something within them. Once we are able to steal it and leave the metaverse, they will have a change of heart and confess what they have done and feel remorse for their actions. I see. Sona placed a hand to her chin. So that's what you meant when you were going to steal their hearts. But you were wondering how Okumura died so disturbingly, Akira asked, getting Sona to continue to stare. It also involves the use of personas in a way. Inside their cognitive worlds, there exists another version of them which we call their shadow. Their shadow versions are protected by other shadows as obstacles. He bent forward to make sure to emphasize that the next thing he was going to say was important. But we can't kill the shadow versions of the target. If we do, they die. Using our personas, we fight our way towards the treasures and then send the calling card before stealing it. Let me guess though. Sona raised her hand to silence Akira for just a second. Something goes wrong when stealing from Okumura-san. No, Akira answered, earing himself a confused look from Sona. When I mentioned Akechi killed Okumura, we never interacted much to know each other to hold a long conversation, and he was not a phantom thief. When attempting to steal the treasure, Shadow Okumura attempted to fight us off but failed. He was still alive when we stole the treasure and ran. But while running, we didn't know there was one other person in the metaverse with us. Let me guess, Sona finished. It was Akechi and he killed this shadow version of Okumura. Yes, Akira nodded, staying silent, the human, the cat, and the devil, and sat patiently. Seeming to be the one who needed to tend the silence, Akira opened his mouth but was cut off by Sona. This tale, it is certainly a wild fantasy. I may not have explained it very well, but I assure you I have been telling the truth. Akira stated. So you claim, Sona countered. But still, thank you for telling me this. I am the student council president of Kuo Academy after all. It is partially my duty to keep all of the students as safe as possible. With the phantom thieves and the incident of Okumura, I didn't want to risk all of you running around if such a case was threatening. She slowly began to stand up. It is late for the both of us. As far as I know, you are telling me the truth. But I am still curious about the metaverse, and how your life as a phantom thief was. It must have been a great deal for you. Being the leader was a bit tough, Akira admitted as he too stood up. Oh, Sona commented. You were actually the leader. Staring, she looked up and down all over Akira's body. You must quiet the person to be able to organize your heists. She put it into thieving terms. You could say that. I have a couple of requests then if you don't mind, she stated, having Akira raise his own eyebrow as he waited for her words. Since you are a leader, you must have created many strategies on the fly or before entering the metaverse. Not only that, but you must have interacted with many people and have a good understanding of them. She waited for him to react and saw him nod. If you'd like, I am in the student council room every day during lunch due to work or having to play chess. I would find it interesting if I could get your opinion of different decisions I make or even have a match or two against you for the game. In exchange, I could provide you with more information of the underworld if you ever need it. Putting a hand to his chin, Akira thought about it. Honestly, there wasn't really any downside to accepting this deal. The more information they could gather, the better. Plus, Sona seemed to be an honest person. It also seemed like she was trying to be a good leader herself and was possibly asking him for his help for doing so. You got yourself a deal. He held his hand out. With a small appreciative smile, Sona shook it. Thank you for accepting my offer. She nodded. Now please put your shirt back on. I am thou art I. Ha, it's not a confidant link. Anyways, yes, I made it so Sona finds out that Akira is a phantom thief. But in my opinion, she could possibly actually piece it together if she did enough research and thinking. Plus, I think it's beginning to near the time the phantom thieves rise once again, this time towards the supernatural side of the world. The next chapter, what will happen? Hint, blonde people. I have no idea if I got half of that stuff right from what Akira was explaining. Dear guest, who has been posting what the weapons are for each of the characters and how they look generally, I do appreciate that you are telling me this, but I've already gone through New Game Plus and gotten them all, some even on my first playthrough. Not only that, but I'm also keeping the TV on while putting them at different angles so I can get my own descriptions. Example, I think I saw something on Makoto's Judge of the Dead revolver that looked like a modified iron sights when she was performing a hold-up with the team. It's those kinds of interesting details that I'm sort of trying to look for. So, it's okay,